In 1944, the world learned how a new kind of power could be built not with armies, but with paper. One day, empires were defined by land and sea, the next, by a single currency. A whole new global order popped up, and guess what? The US dollar is right at the center of it all. Most people think this system is permanent, an unshakable foundation for the world we live in, but what if it was never meant to last? What if the very thing that made America the world's financial superpower is now quietly becoming its greatest weakness? If you've ever wondered why your country's economy seems tied to decisions made thousands of miles away, why your currency fluctuates wildly, or why geopolitical tensions feel like they're escalating faster than ever, you're not alone. What's happening in the global financial system isn't random. It has the echo of an empire built on trust, credit, and a promise that is starting to crack. Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what is your local currency? I love seeing how these financial shifts are felt across the world. And if you enjoy content that connects the dots between money, power, and history, make sure you subscribe because today's story will change how you see every headline about the global economy. Now, let's go back to the foundation of this system. For decades, the global economy has been built on a simple idea. U.S. government debt, known as treasuries, is the safest investment on earth. Think of them as IOUs from the United States government. When a country like Japan or a company like Apple has extra cash, they buy these treasuries. In return, they get a promise from the U.S. to be paid back with interest. It was the bedrock of global finance, the ultimate safe haven asset. This arrangement worked brilliantly for the U.S. It allowed the government to borrow immense sums of money at very low costs, funding everything from its military to its social programs. For the rest of the world, holding U.S. treasuries meant parking their wealth in a stable, reliable asset backed by the world's largest economy. This created a cycle. The world bought U.S. debt, which funded U.S. consumption, which in turn bought the world's goods. The dollar reigned supreme. But now that foundation is showing deep, alarming cracks. The U.S. national debt has spiraled out of control, rocketing past $34 trillion. It's a number so vast it's almost meaningless, growing by $1 trillion every 100 days. Investors around the world, from central bankers in Beijing to fund managers in London, are looking at this mountain of debt and asking a terrifying question. Can America ever actually pay this back? The quiet confidence that once defined U.S. treasuries is turning into loud public doubt. This isn't just a theoretical problem anymore. We're seeing a historic sell-off. For years, countries like China and Japan were the biggest foreign buyers of U.S. debt. They held trillions of dollars in treasuries. But that trend has dramatically reversed. China, once the largest foreign creditor, has been systematically reducing its holdings for over a decade. Japan, Saudi Arabia, and other longtime allies are also quietly stepping back. They are no longer willing to lend America money with the same blind faith they once had. The world's biggest creditors are heading for the exit. The reason for this exodus isn't just about the debt, it's about power. The United States has begun to use its control over the global financial system as a weapon. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies took an unprecedented step. They froze hundreds of billions of dollars of Russia as central bank reserves. Overnight, a major nation's savings were rendered useless. This sent a shockwave through every capital city in the world. Leaders in China, Saudi Arabia, and even India realized that if it could happen to Russia, it could happen to them. Their dollar-denominated assets weren't safe. They were hostages to American foreign policy. This act of financial warfare shattered the illusion of neutrality. Countries began to desperately seek alternatives to the dollar to protect their sovereignty. The weaponization of finance became a catalyst, accelerating a global movement to de-dollarize. Owning U.S. treasuries was no longer just a financial decision. It was a geopolitical liability. On top of the geopolitical risk, there's a simple, painful economic reality. Holding U.S. debt is now a money-losing proposition. Decades of low interest rates, followed by a massive surge in inflation, have eroded the value of these investments. When inflation in the U.S. is running at 3% and a treasury bond is paying you 2%, you are losing purchasing power every single day. This is what economists call a negative real yield. Foreign investors aren't getting a safe return. They're paying the U.S. government for the privilege of lending it money while that money loses value. That's a bad deal, and the world is finally waking up to it. As trust in the dollar and U.S. debt wanes, a new world of alternatives is rapidly rising. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now expanded with new members like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are at the forefront of this shift. They are actively creating new financial systems that bypass the dollar entirely. They are settling trade in their own currencies, like the Chinese yuan and the Indian rupee. This isn't just talk. It's really happening right now, and it's exciting. Russia and China conduct over 90% of their trade outside the dollar system. At the same time, central banks around the world are rushing to buy a much older, more tangible asset, gold. For the last 2 years, central banks have been buying gold at a record-breaking pace, the highest since the 1960s. They are swapping their paper promises from the U.S. government for a physical asset that has no counterparty risk and cannot be frozen or devalued by a single nation's political whim. This is the clearest signal yet that the world is losing faith in paper and returning to hard assets. This global sell-off is creating a dangerous fragility right at the heart of the U.S. financial system. The Treasury market, once the most liquid in the world, is showing signs of stress. With fewer foreign buyers, the U.S. has to offer higher interest rates or yields to attract new investors. But higher rates mean the government's interest payments on its massive debt explode, leading to even more borrowing. This is the definition of a debt spiral, a vicious cycle where a country has to borrow more and more just to pay the interest on its existing debt. This is where the story comes full circle. The very system that projected American power across the globe is now threatening to bankrupt it from within. The trust that took 80 years to build is evaporating. The world no longer sees the United States as the risk-free borrower of last resort, but as the world's largest and most precarious debtor. We are witnessing a fundamental move away from a unipolar world, dominated by the U.S. dollar, toward a multipolar financial system where no single currency holds absolute power. So what does the future look like? The end of the dollar's dominance won't happen overnight. It won't be a single dramatic collapse like in 1929. Instead, it will be a slow, grinding transition. We are likely moving toward a world where global reserves are held in a basket of currencies, the dollar, the euro, and tangible assets like gold. Trade will be settled in a variety of local currencies, breaking America's ability to control global commerce through sanctions. Power will become more diffuse, more regional, and far more unpredictable. The core message is this: the era of America's debt-fueled global supremacy is coming to a close. It's happening quietly, not in a single cataclysmic event, but in thousands of transactions every day. It's happening in every central bank that chooses to buy a bar of gold instead of a U.S. Treasury bond. It's happening in every trade deal settled in yuan instead of dollars. You're not just watching a financial story. You're watching the slow, deliberate unwinding of an empire built on a promise the world no longer believes. And the consequences will reshape the lives of every single person on this planet.